So you might think that your service department is efficient because revenue is looking strong, but if you're not tracking your first time fix rate and making sure it's consistent, then what you might be paying for is, duplicate jobs, duplicate labor, wasted truck time. And the big one is, dissatisfied customers. They might not tell you, but, having a bad review, we all sort of know the cost of that. And so what I'm going to show is how to calculate, how many jobs were successful the first time, how many required a return visit, and then you get a percentage, and then you set a benchmark to create this chart. And then we have a heat map with a threshold. And so anything above this number will turn red. Sorry, below this number will turn red. Because above is good, right? Like 100% is good. But also what you want to check, and we're not doing it here, but how many jobs did, Alex have in January? Because if it's just one job, then you might not have enough data to make, a good decision. But anyways, so let's get started. So in the data set here, and if you want this data set, there's a link to download it. And if you can't find it, just shoot me an email and I'll give you my email here at the end. So we have a data set, this would be like an export from Service Titan. It could be, something you recreate. And if you need help creating that, again, just let me know. There will be a link to where you can hop on my calendar. So we need to take this data and we need to calculate month. Then is it even eligible to be considered a first time fix? Like in other words, was it completed? Is it the first visit? Is it a return visit? And then also, was it a success? And I'll show you how to do all that. So over here, we have the service date, and then we need to calculate the month. And I've already done the formulas, but I'll just redo this one real quick. So it's a text function, so equals text, and then click on the service date, which is, at service date, because we're using a table. And if you want to use a table, just press Control T, and then it'll transform the data into a table. And then we have that here, and so that calculates this. So the next formula here, it's a little bit complex, but don't be too scared by it. What it is think of an if statement. It's saying if this, then that. And so we're saying if and the visit type is initial, meaning the first visit, the call type is a repair or an emergency, and then the job status is completed, and then the return visit flag is a no. So if all of these things are true, then it's yes. Otherwise, it's not eligible to be considered a first time fix. So yeah, if you just want to pause the video to see this formula, but essentially it's just saying all of these things are true, and if all of these things are true, then it's yes, it's eligible. No, it's not eligible. And then for the success flag, what we need to this is yes, it was a success. And what we need here is we need to count the original job ID, which means here, if this is inside of the original of the job ID, then it means it's a secondary visit, right? So visit number 2. So we need to make sure that there's nothing here. Then we need to make sure that the return visit flag, which is right here, is not a yes, right? So we need to make sure it's a no. And so we're counting the rows that happens. And if the count is greater than 0, which means return visit flag is a yes, and the column with the job ID is there's something there, then it's not eligible, right? So that's a 0. So it's just binary, 0. And if both of those things aren't true, meaning the return visit flag is an N for no, and there's nothing in this column, then it's a 1, which means it is a success. Okay, so let's get started. What we need to do here takes 5 minutes, 4 minutes just to explain things. So we need to type in the word month and then January, and then just drag that down to December. And then the next thing we need is we want, first time fix, required return visit, first time percentage, which again is just 3 divided by the sum of these two, divided by 65, and then a benchmark. And so I'll just copy this right over here. Okay, so now we have to calculate this number here. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure the first time eligible flag, remember the last thing we calculated, is yes. And then the success flag is 1, meaning it was a success. And then also the month is January. So equals COUNTIFS. And so is it eligible? That's the first thing. And so we want Y, so comma and then Y, and put that in quotations. And then here, we want this to be a 1. And because it's a number, you don't have to put it in quotations. And then here, we want this to be the month January. Then you can press enter. And so you have 62 there. So now we're good. So required return visit here is going to be essentially the same thing, but instead of success, it's a 0. Instead of a 1, it's a 0. So we can just copy this formula, paste it here, and then change this 1 here to a 0. Right? And that's where you get 3. So first time fixed rate. So the first time fixed rate is going to equal this divided by the sum of these two. And then you get a percentage. And press Control Shift and the number 5. And then you can just drag that down. Center and drag it down. And then say the benchmark is 95%. And then what we can do here is we can do equals the number above it. And I'll show you why. And the reason is now we can make it dynamic. Right? So everything changes. So whenever we create the chart, it will, the benchmark line can move up and down. Okay, so let's create the chart. So just highlight this and then highlight both of these. But what I'm going to do just to show you a little trick is I'm just going to highlight the first one. Go to Insert, and then you can do Recommended, or you click on a line, whatever you want. Make it black. Okay, so let's remove the decimal place here. The reason why there's to the 10th decimal, it's because the 10th decimal is here. If you remove it from here, then it'll remove from there. But if you want it here, but you don't want it here, then just double click, go to the 3 little columns, go to the number, and then 0. And then if you want the values here, you can click on the line, click the crosshair, and then click Data Labels. And then again, if you want the values to not be on the chart, but to be in the table here, in the range, then you can just go to percentage and then 0. Okay, the trick I wanted to show you is just highlight benchmark, copy, click on the chart, and then Control V to paste. And now, for whatever reason, you lose the chart title. But we will call this, say, first. What is going on here? Give me the title. First time fixed rate by month. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll make it a little bit smaller. So we have that, but 2 more things I want to do. The first one is I want to take this line, I'm going to click on it, and then over here I'm going to go to the little paint bucket, and then I want it to be a little bit thinner, say 1.5, and then I'll also make it a little bit of a grid, or like a dash. And then if the second thing I want to do is if you want this y-axis here to be different, meaning like say you want it to start from 80%, then you can click here and just change this to 80. I'm not going to do it, but if you wanted to, that's how you do it. I'll just show you. 0.8, but then it changes, to 2 decimal point increments. Okay, I'll do it. It's fine. Okay, so the next thing we need now is we want to create the efficiency, the first time fixed rate by technician and then by months again. A unique list of the technicians here. That is, we want a unique list. So we don't want, Jeremy Foster to be there multiple times. We just want a list of everybody. And so equals unique. And then go to data and then click. Whenever you click, you see how the mouse sort of changes? Like, you don't want the eye to be highlighted. You want the mouse to change, but not the eye highlighted. And you can always see in your formula. But that's what you want there, because we don't want the word service date. We want this. And then from here, we can just copy this, Control C, and then Control Shift V to paste it. And then we can call this, tech name. And then again, type in January, but instead of, let me center everything. Instead of dragging top to bottom, we want to go left to right to get the month. And we have that here, and so we're good. Okay, so finally, so what we have to do now is sort of the same thing that we did here, but what we want to do is we need to do essentially this in one formula because we don't want to get 62 and then 3 because then we need January to be there twice. And so what I'm going to do is recreate sort of these two formulas, but inside of one formula, if that makes sense. And so we need to essentially get 62. Well, it won't be 62, but we need to get Alex Rodriguez for the month of January, first time fixed in the numerator. And then in the denominator, we need to get that same number, the 62 plus 3. And I'll show you a little trick that some of you might not, might have never worked with. But so the first thing we want to do is we want to count FS. So we want to count Alex Rodriguez. Here, let me go up here just to show you. We want to count Alex Rodriguez where the first time eligible flag is yes. The success flag is 1, but instead of month, no, sorry, we want month to be January, and then we want to also add the technician name. And I'll just show you. I'll just copy this formula again. Just to show you that once you learn count FS, sum FS, average FS, max FS, like once you learn those things, then you can really, manipulate your data and massage your data to give you the insights that you need. I would say, learn those with a couple lookups and you're going to be good. And maybe some, some functions to manipulate text, which I cover all that stuff. Okay, so we already have this. We just want the month to be here. And then we just want to add the technician name. So cell B19 here, but the technician name is here. And again, you're going to want to not highlight the column. You see how this is II? If you do this, you'll get an error because these are measuring the table and this is measuring the whole column. So just click on table technician and then comma and then Alex. So this is saying that for Alex, he had 4 jobs where the first time fix rate was a success. Maybe he only had 4 jobs and he has 100%, but say he had 6 jobs, right? Then it would be 67%. Okay, so now in the bottom part of this equation, what we have to do is we have to do the same thing. And this is where I'll show you the trick. We have to do the same thing, but here we want 1 and 0, right? Because the 1 is a success and the 0 is a failure or, not success. But we want the combination of both of them. Essentially, we're trying to get this here. And so the way you can do that is you can use a curly bracket and then type 0 because we want 0 and also 1. Like this, and I think I'm going to get an error. Yeah. And the reason I get an error is because let me just show you what this formula is doing. It's creating a dynamic array. So in other words, what this is saying, if you remember here, there was a 4. So that's this 4 right here. But there's a 0, meaning there was nothing unsuccessful. So his January first time fix rate was 100%. But what you have to do to fix that is you have to sum. You have to sum this right here. So we want to essentially add 0 plus 4. And now you get 100%. And then now I want to drag this over and down, but the problem is if I go like this, you get an error. And the reason you'll see is because you see above eligible flag, the little red line. What's happening is the Alex here, the name here is going over 1. And then if you were to put it here, you get the same error because January, the month, is going down 1. But we don't want that to happen, right? We want to tell Excel like, hey, as I drag this over, I want January to become February, but I don't want Alex to become, 100%. And then as I drag it down, I want Alex to become Anthony, but I don't want January to become 100%. And you have to do what's called absolute and relative referencing. In this example, it's all going to be relative referencing. So wherever you see the blue, you see it twice, you want to put a $sign in between the column and the row. So like in between the letter and the number. And then wherever you see B19, you just want to put the $sign before the column because you're locking the column. Whatever you put it before, you're locking. So if you put it before the column, which is the letter, you're locking the column. So as you drag it over, it's going to stay locked. But you're not locking the row. So as you drag it down, the rows will change, if that makes sense. But this is like very valuable to know. And the reasoning is because there's going to you don't want to have to type in the same formula, 100 times. And so here, if you just copy this, let me paste it down here, and you'll see one other problem: divide by zero errors. And the reason you're getting those is because there's nothing in the denominator, right? In other words, they didn't do any jobs. There was no fixes or callbacks, return visits. There was just, for Jason Thompson in May, he just didn't do any jobs, right? Which is probably pretty unrealistic, unless if you see it like, the first month or like the first part of the data, it could be like they weren't even working there. You hired them later on in the year. But in this scenario, for them to have 100 in April and then 100 in June, it's like, okay, maybe, I don't know, maybe they were sick or something. But this part isn't that realistic, but it's just to show you how to solve these problems. And so what you want to do is anytime you see an error, you want to use what's called the if error function. So if there's an error, then do something, right? What do you want it to do? And I'll show you just so you could say like no data. And then if you copy that and paste it over, you can see there's no data here. And so you can set up conditional formatting to highlight just no data a certain color, and then highlight anything below the benchmark a certain color. But what I'm going to do just for this is I'm going to just make it blank. So now there's just nothing there. Okay, and now we want the benchmark. So I'm going to type in 75% here. And so from here, what we want is anything below this number, we want to highlight it red. So just highlight the data and then conditional formatting. So home tab, conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, less than, and then click on the cell. And then everything updates. And so, yeah, that's essentially how you do that. One more thing I will show you is how do we get the word in here? Because if we type in, benchmark 75%, this is text. So this wouldn't work. Like if we do this, nothing works, right? Because it's not being stored as a numerical value. But there's a way you can tell Excel, hey, I want it to be a number, but I also want to add text before or after, depending on what you want to do. And the way you do that is just press Control-1, go to Custom, and then you'll see the percentage. If you don't see it, then you want 0 and then the percent. And then go before the 0, type in your quotations, and then type in benchmark : space quotations. And then now you have a numerical value. And then from here, I can do, say, this. And yeah, now you have that. And so, yeah, that's essentially how you do that. There's one last thing. I'm not going to do it here, but you see a 0. And the 0 just means that there was only errors. So like, only callbacks. And so in other words, the first time fix on the numerator, there was a 0, but on the denominator, there was a 1, right? And so that could be something. It could be a 1, it could be a 2, it could be a 3, right? So like, in other words, so equals 0 divided by 1, you get 0. But if you do equals 1 divided by 0, you get the error. And that's why we saw the error before. Equals 0 divided by 0. This is why we saw the error. You can't divide by 0 if you remember your math days. But I'll leave the zeros. I'll leave the zeros in this data set. But anyways, that is essentially how you can calculate first time fix rate by month and by tech. And so there's a lot of other ways you can do this. And so since you already understand the COUNTIFS now, you could also do it, if you wanted to do it by customer type. So instead of having months on the top, you could have customer type on the top. You could also have, problem description on the top, system type on the top. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could do it. And so I just wanted to show you how to understand the COUNTIFS function, how to calculate these 3 over here on the right, which is important. And also it's important to have whenever you're importing data, like say you're adding every month, you want to always have the formulas off to the right. I mean, or the left, but you don't want to have it like in the middle of the data, because the next month, whenever you copy and you paste the data, into say a master data set, then you're going to have to, paste the first 10 columns, and then now you have month, and then you got to paste the next 10, and then now you have first time, fix eligibility flag. And so it's just better to have all the formulas off to one side. I always do the right, but whatever's your preference. But anyways, so that's all I got for this one. If you have any questions about this, you can shoot me an email, questions@databoards.com. io. And it also, if you can't get your data quite figured out, like to be structured this way, because you need to take the export from Service Titan, take the books, or if you're manually entering in data, or you have other softwares that you're using, you can structure like this. I know it's possible because I've done this for my clients that are also in HVAC, and so it's 100% doable if you have this data. And so yeah, so if you need some help with that, shoot me an email, or in the description there's going to be a form that you can fill out to hop on my calendar. But anyways, that's all I got for this one, and I will see you in future videos.